Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Outpost Review. That's actually a really good opportunity for me to cut up some nailers, is what I call them, to be able to screw the siding into. They've got some bark, but what I do is I flip the bark towards the inside, and then of course when that gets nailed to the stud wall, that gives me a perfectly good side to screw to, as long as it's not too much bark, but it gives me an opportunity to kind of use up some of that material that I probably wouldn't use on the interior wall because of the edge of it, actually the 1.5-inch portion not being able to say butt up 2 pieces of drywall. But on a horizontal run where I turn that to the inside, then that gives me plenty of material on the outside that I can actually screw to. Anyway, I thought today that I would answer quite a few comments that I've been getting. What I'm doing today, it's raining outside, so I'm having to take that opportunity to work inside so that I don't get the cameras outside and get them wet. And I figured what I would do is go ahead and pre-cut everything for the next section. I'll get the radiant barrier ready, and I'll actually move the plastic over because I've got one section already covered with the siding. I've actually started putting up the battens. So what I'll do is I'll just move everything, the plastic on the inside, over to that section, and once I get everything cut, and that will be ready to go. So when I have a nice day, I just go outside, remove the plastic on the outside, throw those horizontal, or I'll throw the radiant barrier up first, let's remember that. Then put the horizontal 2x4s on and begin to continue with the siding. So let me get my gloves off and we'll sit down and we'll talk about some of these comments that we've been getting on the cabin up here. Oh, I have to get myself a little place to sit down here. So I went back and I pulled up some of these questions, and one guy comments, says screwing the batten between the boards is the correct way, and I don't think caulking will help, but just trap moisture. Well, I'm hoping that there won't be any moisture that gets behind the boards, but in the event that it does, I'm not so sure that it would dry out. If there wasn't any space, say it didn't have any shrinkage and that batten is actually tight up against the board, I'm not so sure it would even dry out then. But you know, I do know that screwing the battens to one side of the boards is also a policy, or is a thing that a lot of people follow too, but I just prefer to screw mine right in the middle. Another one says that I agree with you attaching the battens in the center, but the caulk I don't think is needed, but won't hurt if it makes you feel better. Thanks for the content. Well, I just thought that, you know, by putting that in there, let's suppose that I didn't really have any shrinkage occur, that if any moisture got behind the batten, you know, it might not be able to get in there. The other thing too is if it squeezes out on both sides, it might keep the moisture from getting towards that crack too. So, you know, like I said before, it doesn't cost that much, so I thought that I would go ahead and do that while I was putting it in. You know, to me it's just, I guess, kind of like common sense or logic that, you know, it could help, just like a lot of things that you do outside, you caulk so that the water won't run inside. Another guy writes that he actually lives in Massachusetts, and he said, I was curious about the lack of sheathing on the exterior walls. I live in Massachusetts and we have harsh enough climate that sheathing and Tyvek wrap are required. In your location, is it mild enough that you don't need the sheathing to prevent wind and rain damage? I guess he's talking about the Tyvek. That's something that's not relatively new, but you know, back in the day people didn't used to do that. They would actually put on, a lot of them would put blackboard on the house, and then they would put their siding on top of that. you know, and a lot of that material is only like 1/2 inch or so forth. But I decided, you know, that what I would do is go ahead and use 1-inch material. That's the reason that I cut it that thick. And I would do the board and batten because I'd be less likely to have buckling occur, and that, you know, running with the grain, water would naturally be able to run off, as opposed to putting it horizontal, it would be going against the grain. Don't bite, okay? Anyway, but yeah, I mean, a lot of these are really good comments, and the Tyvek is something that people do use now, but I just really didn't see the need for it. We don't really have a whole lot of wind here primarily. You know, there are certain parts of the year that we may get, you know, wind during the day. Most of the times it comes with a lot of the rainstorms that we may get. There'll be a period of, before the rain gets here, there'll be a period of high winds, but then once the rain gets here, it's gone. Here recently, you know, we've had some abnormal weather where we did get some wind, but, you know, it doesn't amount to a great deal. So I don't think that when I'm done that I'll have any trouble with moisture behind the wall, but, you know, that remains to be seen. Another person writes that I'm really liking the charred stained look of the siding. I do too. As opposed to just putting it up and letting it, you know, primarily turn. You know, a lot of the older homes around here that were done board and batten, they didn't put anything on them, and they basically turned gray, you know, and they lasted a long time. But I kind of like the charred look, and like I said, that Australian tung oil that I'm using, I really like that stuff. I think that it provides a good coating on the outside, and it just remains to be seen how long it's going to last. But I was kind of turned on to that by a subscriber, and they said that they'd used it before and it lasted for years. So you know, I know that I'm going to have to put another coat on it, but it remains to be seen as to when, you know. Another person writes, curious as to what style of windows that you're going to be using. I'm not going to use anything real expensive. They're going to be the single hung. I've already checked them out at the local hardware, so I'll be purchasing those and put them in. I'm not going to get the ones that are encased. I'll do that myself, but that's what I've got in mind to use. And you know, another thing too is a lot of times people, they tune into a channel like this review channel, and they primarily think that, you know, this is the channel. Well, this is actually not the channel. Our main channel is Smoky Mountain Outpost. So if you are new to this channel right here, this is Outpost Review. This is behind the scenes of, you know, what, why, and how we're doing things here, which basically it's a brand channel under the main channel, Smoky Mountain Outpost. So I suggest, you know, if you haven't checked that out, run over there and check it out, and you'll see what I'm talking about. That's where we do all the building and all the work on all the different projects. Also had another one right, that they said in the north that they have to use vapor barriers because they have such a large differential in temperature from the inside to the outside. They also typically less moisture in the air. They said that the ice builds up when the warm air is meeting the cold air, and it builds until they get a temperature change, and then it melts and causes all kinds of problems for them. He said, I've been watching the way that you're doing things because I plan on moving to Kentucky, and they get twice the moisture there than we get here. This requires a different design in the house. What you're doing makes total sense. People seem to forget sometimes that they don't know what they don't know. Well, you know, I don't know everything either. But I have lived here for a number of years. I've built another home prior to this one just down the road. Very large house, probably 3 times the size of this cabin right here with an upstairs, and kind of did it along the same lines, you know, 2x4 wall. I did not use radiant barrier then. It wasn't even thought of at that point. But I did use exterior siding like this. I actually ran it horizontal. Now there was a covered porch all the way around it, and I did use T111 siding on the upper portion on the sides. What I did was I used the 1x10s and I ran them horizontal, and then I took some exterior siding like that gray masonite and I cut it in 2-inch strips. So what I did when I laid that 1x10 down, then I put a 2-inch strip on top of that, then put another 1x10, another 2-inch strip, and I just basically stacked them. So it looked like a log home, but wasn't actually a real log home. But the look of it, the effect that I got by doing that, it really looked good. You know, one of these days I did tell my neighbor, I said, I want to come up here and take some video, you know, not necessarily come inside, but I want to take some video of the outside so that you all can see that, because it really turned out well. And now where I put the masonite strips, I did go in there and caulk. But then afterwards what I did, and we stained the boards before we put them up, just like I'm doing here. But what I did is I used a paint sprayer and I put a clear coat. I taped up the windows and everything, and I clear coated that whole cabin, and it actually turned out really nice. What do you want? You want some treat? You want some treat? Do you want some treat? Huh? You want that? Okay. Okay. You want some? You want some treat? Is it good? Is it good? You ready? Catch. Oh, almost. Want some treat? Catch. Oh, almost. Trying to teach him to catch. Okay, sit. 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 Ready? Oh, almost. One more. Ready? Oh, you'll get it. Was it good? Huh? Was it good? Was it good? Yes, it was. Yes, it was. He loves those extra cheese Cheez-Its. Also had another one right, using the propane burner on the inside here might be the reason that we saw moisture build up. There were times long before I even did that I had the plastic up, that I would actually come up and I would actually see moisture beads hanging on the outside of the, or actually on the inside of the plastic, and I don't know if maybe that was the cabin being cool on the inside and then the sun hitting it on the outside, not really sure, but there were beads of moisture, and so that's one reason I decided not to use that plastic at all, because I don't want that happening once the walls are closed up. I have more peace of mind knowing that I don't have that in there, and that radiant barrier has holes in it so that it can breathe. So hopefully if any moisture gets trapped back there, that I don't have any issues. You know, I'm looking at some of the comments from the other channel now, the Smoky Mountain Outpost, and people are concerned when I use the ladder. You got to remember, I worked 30 years on a ladder and off of hooks on a utility pole, you know, either on the side of the mountain or inside the city limits, in suburbs and up in hollows. So I'm at home up on a ladder or on the hooks, you know. It's not anything that's strange to me. So, you know, I appreciate all the concern, but to me it's just like sitting down right here. I don't feel any concern whatsoever when I'm up there. So I'm almost halfway with the siding on the cabin. As soon as I finish this section right here, I started in that opposite corner, I will actually have half of the boards put up, not all the battens. Now I did start on this corner adding battens as I'm coming this way, and of course the whole front's going to have them, but at the time I didn't have them cut. I've got some more help coming up here in a few days, and we'll probably cut some more battens so that when Jennifer has opportunity to come up here, they'll be here ready for her to work on. No, I figured that on days like this, as soon as I get this cut right here, I'll probably, you know, stain some or burn them and stain them myself. But anyway, yeah, what I'm doing here is I'm pre-cutting everything so that, you know, it's all ready to go. Just about got these two right here. I got one that's going to go right about here, the other one that's going to go here, and then this one right here is the top plate. I've cut a couple pieces that's going to go in between here. I've still got the two that are down there. They will go here. I've got to cut out my window frame, and then pretty much that's done. Then what I'll do is I'll take some of that radiant barrier and I'll cut out a couple pieces of that, and it'll be ready to go. You know, I get so many questions on that radiant barrier. Might I make a suggestion? Go to atticfoil.com, ATTICFOIL.com, and check out that product. My nephew, I did do a review back in the very beginning when we started this channel on the radiant barrier, and he actually sat in on it and talked about it a little bit. If you're new to this channel, I have some that I'm going to put on the very bottom of the floor joist. Now I took insulation right here. This is 6-inch insulation, and I placed it on top of my floor joist, okay, before I actually put this OSB down. I tacked it on the top, all right? I still have I need to go under there, and I'll put in some of the wire holders along the way as I'm actually putting the radiant barrier up. But since I'm used 2x10s, okay, that will provide me a space between this and my radiant barrier. Now, the radiant barrier comes in many different forms. What I'm using comes from a different company than, say, the bubble wrap. Primarily, it's the same process. It's the same thing, actually. Okay, what it does is it reflects radiant heat. Okay, we probably shouldn't even use the word barrier. Okay, because when you say barrier, people think moisture. This is radiant. All right, it's kind of like aluminum foil. It will reflect heat. Okay. But my suggestion is to go on there and check that out, atticfoil.com, and when I get the underside of the house done, it will be totally encased in the barrier, okay, stapled to the face or the bottom of my floor joist. I'm not going to staple it to the inside of the floor joist. I'm going to go all the way across the bottom. So if you were lying down on the ground looking up, all you're going to see is aluminum. Or the barrier. Okay, it's not really aluminum. You're going to see the barrier, and you won't see any floor joists or anything. So hopefully that will radiate heat that may go through the floor back into the house. And the reason that I'm putting it in the walls is because I want it to radiate heat back into the house. I'm also going to put it on my ceiling so it'll radiate heat back into the house. So basically, I'll be totally encased in barrier. Now, I understand that cell signal doesn't want to work through that, and I can already tell that my signal's dropped a little bit on my cell phone, and that may be true to the fact that, you know, the service can't penetrate that foil because it basically, you know, blocks it. So I may have to get some sort of a system where I have an external antenna with some Wi-Fi in here, but, you know, that's okay. I probably need a gain device out here anyway because I've only got 2 bars of LTE up here on the side of this hill. Of course, when I go over there to my sister's house, which is across the road, probably about a quarter of a mile, I don't get anything up there. It's line of sight, I guess. So I'm kind of right in the right spot where I can get a cell signal out here in the middle of nowhere. So that's something that I may have to look into. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to encase the whole house in the radiant barrier. I think what I'm going to do up here, since I put that wall to the outside and I wasn't going to run any 2x4s because I had in mind to put T111 siding, what I'm going to do up there is I'll get some 2-inch foam insulation, and what I'll do, I'll get the kind that has the silver back on one side, and I'll go ahead and take some of this, cut it and glue it on the other side, put that in there, and then I'll have a barrier basically on both sides of that up there, plus the R factor that the insulation gives me. So I'm kind of thinking along those lines of doing that up there at the top. But you know, another thing too is they said something about putting a loft in here. If I had a loft, it would be minimal headroom, you know, and the last thing I want to do is kind of crouch over. I don't want any ceiling on there either. Just added expense. My ceiling is actually going to be the bottom side of the rafters. So when I get my insulation in there and my radiant barrier up there, I'm going to have tongue and groove that I'm going to put on the back side of the 2x4s, so it'll kind of be a cathedral ceiling somewhat, and that will become my ceiling. That's what I did on my other home. It was a non-vented ceiling, working just fine. Actually, when it snows, it worked so well that the snow stayed packed on the metal and you didn't see any spots where any heat was getting through. Of course, I did that a little bit different. I actually used, what I did was I built an A-frame with 3x5 rafters. It was a 1 in 12 pitch, okay? For every 1 foot, it rose a foot. But what I did was I built an A-frame with, and I took these and I hewed them out with a foot ad, or an ad, and then I built them together, laying them down, then I stood them up, okay? And then the first thing that I did was I screwed the tongue and groove down. I just kind of built it on the outside of it. I built it up. Then I bought 2-inch insulation, foam insulation with OSB on the back side of it. I screwed that into the frame itself. And then what I did was I went back behind that and I took 1x4s and I screwed those in, and then I put the metal on top of that. So by the time I got done, the roof was very thick, okay? Because you had the 1-inch material of the tongue and groove, you had the 2 inches of the foam, you had the 1/2 inch of the OSB, then you had kind of like the dead airspace because you had the 1x4 strips on top of that, and it's done very well. It didn't allow much heat to get through at all, and that ceiling was actually 22 feet high. This one right here is only, let's see, what is that, 5 and 8, that's 13. This is only 13, so it was nearly twice as high. So this one's going to be just like the other one. It's not going to have a vent in it, and it should work okay just like the other one has. And it's been built since 1997, so it's been there quite a long time. But yeah, I don't want to put a loft in here. I'm going to have 2 big huge closet spaces. You know, I'll have the extra bedroom because I want to have 2 in here. It'll give me plenty of space to put stuff, but I will have an extra room in case somebody wants to hang out up here with me. But yeah, I want to be able to see everything from down here, and it's just extra material, you know, putting in a ceiling when I don't really need it. The only ceiling I'm going to have is a false ceiling, which is going to be in the bathroom area. Well, I've got all the necessary pieces cut here now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get my reflective barrier out and start working on that. Then I'll move that section of plastic over here. But guys, oh, by the way, we have a company that's reached out to us. I can't remember the exact name of them, I think Snap Tools or something like that, that wanted to talk to us about a reciprocating saw, or basically a Sawzall, that's battery operated. So stay tuned for that, because if we do get that, then I'll be given a review on that. I don't have anything to compare it to other than the fact that I do have one that has a cord on it, but you know, using it here, I will be able to tell you how it holds up under normal use and how long the battery lasts and so forth. So kind of looking forward to that, so you all stay tuned for it. I hope that this review was a little informative. I know it's a little bit out of the ordinary, but there were a lot of questions that, or comments that people had that I thought that I probably needed to address. But yeah, the cabin's coming along great. I'll soon be halfway, be turning the corner to getting 3/4 of the way, and I do have some help the next couple of Saturdays, so we should be able to knock out some more of the battens, and we should also be able to get the other gable end covered. That way when I turn that corner, actually I think when I end up here, I'm going to start on that opposite corner and come towards the back. That way that those boards that Jennifer worked on, they have a chance to dry as long as possible. Well guys, that's going to be it for today. I hope that helped by answering some of the comments that I've been getting. And you know, everybody's going to do something different. I'm doing this my way. Don't have any rules or regulations up here as far as building. I'm just kind of doing it how I see fit, and hopefully with some logic and some common sense. I made a few mistakes along the way, but I went back and corrected them. But anyway, appreciate you guys tuning in. Thank you for all your support. My son, my daughter, and I, we really appreciate that. Hope everyone has a great day. Take care, and look forward to seeing you back up at the Outpost again next time.